Welcome to Syndicated Nightmares, where each week we take a deep dive into an episode of Freddy's Nightmares based on the Nightmare on Elm Street film series. Today, hosts Dave and Michelle are covering The Bride Wore Red, which aired December 17th, 1988, written by Howard Lakin Green and directed by George Kaczender. I probably messed his name up.
Yeah, but I can't help you.
Okay, well, great. If he's listening, he can call in and tell me how to pronounce his name correctly.
Yes.
So I got the vibe that this should have been the Freddy's Nightmares Christmas episode or holiday episode because it was the last one to air before the holiday season. Yeah, it really had nothing to do with Christmas or holidays, nothing.
No, I mean, the title implies that it might, but that was not the case.
So the synopsis is Jessica, played by Diane Franklin, is a newlywed with deep-seated fears of infidelity and divorce brought on by her cheating, domineering father. She becomes an avenging angel who seduces and exposing cheating husbands, but the disintegration of her parents' marriage drives her insane. And that's like the perfect synopsis for this episode because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, although that's pretty much the second half because there's a whole first half about her fiance and his wedding day jitters. The episode started off really strangely because it's sort of this, it looks like a carnival or a circus, and this guy, the character's name is Gavin, and he's talking about marriage as being a holy padlock and every man's worst nightmare, and it comes off like it's this dream sequence, but then she walks out in a wedding dress and it's not a dream sequence. Like they're getting married the next day and he's doing this like pre-wedding home video, which just struck me as awful that they're about to get married and he's making this video talking about what a hellish thing marriage is.
Yeah, and it's breaking or doing that curse of if you see the bride in her dress before the wedding, then you're like doomed.
Yeah, and she's Dan Franklin, the character's name is Jessica, and she's very like down to earth and is very upfront with him, saying call it off if you're not ready. I mean, she seems very mature and he seems a little ridiculous. And then his obnoxious friends show up to take him out on the town.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes that it was just a very cynical view of marriage right from the beginning. Oh, we didn't mention the director and the writer, and basically everyone except for Diane Franklin, they had nothing in their catalog to do with horror.
Oh, I saw that, yeah, the director had done TV movies.
Yeah, both the director and writer, they did 2 or 3 Freddy's Nightmares. This episode was their first one for each. But other than that, there's really no horror in their experience. So, and I think it kind of shows because just the vibe of this whole episode, I thought, was kind of off.
Yeah, I would say out of all the ones we've watched so far, this is the least Freddy-ish or nightmare-ish. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really feel like a Nightmare on Elm Street show.
No, not at all. And up until the part when Freddy would come in between the segments, I didn't even realize I was watching anything that had to do with Freddy or A Nightmare on Elm Street.
So Gavin goes with his friends to this bar called the Ball and Chain. Very subtle.
It's not the Springwood Ball and Chain?
I was just going to say that. At least they were more creative and didn't just call it the Springwood Bar. And when they're first showing it, it seems like there's all these women in there and they're like hanging around having a good time. And I was seeing all these women having fun and thinking like, ugh, these guys are, these obnoxious party guys are going to bother them.
I really like how he went to his bachelor party dressed in his tuxedo for his wedding the next day.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, Gavin is there all night in his tuxedo to be married in, but yet he's like, no, I'm going to have one last fling in my tuxedo.
Right. And he tells his friends that he's 22, which I feel like the character should have been a few years older because 22 is so young.
It is very young. What were you doing at age 22? Were you trying to get married?
No. Was literally the furthest thing from my mind.
Oh yeah, mine too. Yeah, I was at some lesbian bar every night, not every night, but at least every weekend in Akron called Rosetto's. And I was in a love triangle. Unbeknownst to the other two, they didn't even know, like, the other one existed. It wasn't like a typical love triangle where they were both after me. I was both after them. Yeah, one was a Leo and one was a Taurus, and yeah, I was just so in love with both of them, but neither would give me the time of the day unless they wanted to. So I was their little play toy, and that's when I was 22. So
things didn't pan out with either of them?
No. One was a psychologist, and she moved to Colorado. And then the Leo, she's in Columbus. She went off and did her own thing. She met some girl, and they were together for like a long time.
Yeah. And I think it was the year after college, and I was just moved to LA and was focused on work, and I don't think I even dated anyone that whole year.
Is that when you were on the Andy Dick show?
It was, yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, I'm sure he kept you rather busy.
I did, yeah. That was probably why I didn't date that year, because I was, working insane hours and keeping really busy.
Onto the show. So married, married at 22 is very young.
Right, and he says, like, I've never been very good at you're 22. How many experiences with commitment have you had?
Yeah, that's very true. Well, I'm sure he probably had like a high school sweetheart, and Jessica was probably his college girlfriend, I assume, just based off like the type of house they have, that he's probably college educated and probably has a really good job to be able to afford the tuxedo and the wedding dress and everything, because again, in Springwood, neither of their parents really seem to be interested in what's going on in their lives, even though these are like, they're in their early 20s, so their parents really shouldn't be too involved with them, but still very much indicated that the parents had nothing to do with their kids growing up.
True. We'll get into her parents, but do we know anything about his parents?
I don't think so. He never mentions them, even when he's trying to comfort her, which he really doesn't. He's not a very sympathetic husband or husband-to-be. He never says anything like, well, when I was growing up, my parents and I, blah, blah, blah. He never gave any, like, qualifying statements, so I didn't really care for him.
No. Jessica did not really choose well.
No, she didn't. But if she was basing him off of her father, then I guess that's to be, a long time ago I heard the saying that a girl's first love is always her father, and like what her father is. So maybe she subconsciously just, was dating a man just like her dad.
Yeah, I guess so. And he does work with the dad, yeah. And the dad has a line that he's better than her usual morons. So apparently he's a step up from the people Jessica dated before him.
Yes, and that's why the father makes him the VIP of marketing and gives him a $20,000 raise.
Which also seems weird it would make more sense if he were 25. It seems weird to make a 22-year-old a VP of marketing.
Yeah, and I'm sure there were several other employees that were more qualified for that job. They're going to have to be pretty ticked off when they find out that the son-in-law got the VP job.
Before we get to that, there's a whole weird dream sequence thing that happens at the bar when he's out with the best men. First, Freddy appears as Rap Master Freddy, but just doesn't really do anything. He just appears as a as Rap Master.
He's wearing sunglasses, and he has the DJ turntable, and he's using his glove to like scratch the records and turn the records, and he's just like, I'm Rap Master Freddy. And that's it. Like, that's all. Right. That's all.
Right. Exactly what we expect a long dead child murderer to do.
I don't remember this, but I heard that there was a MTV spin-off of Freddy hosting videos. Do you remember that?
I think I've heard of that, but
Okay, yeah. I was reading an article about things you never knew about A Nightmare on Elm Street, and that was in there, and I was like, well, I've never known that. I don't remember that at all. So maybe that was around the time that the show was on, and they were, I don't know, just trying to cross-promote it. I don't know.
It does seem like, 1988, 89 would have been the time they would have done something like that. So, and then becomes a dream sequence at the club,
which is pretty much like a strip club.
Yeah, like there's men taking a number to go see some girl behind a velvet rope
who will sleep with married men.
Yeah,
because he tried to pick up some other girl. And she was like, you're married. I don't do that, but I know someone who will. And like sends him over to that line.
Which is a little sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
Like taking a number to go see her. But then when she appears, she looks like Diane Franklin. And then I think he sees her face, in a couple other places, and there's people wearing masks, and it turns into this whole weird thing until they bring out the stripper from hell.
Yes, that was like her actual title, the stripper from hell.
And then she takes off like her, she takes off a layer, but she doesn't really strip.
Mm-hmm.
But she just sort of insults him.
Yeah, I wrote down all his fears are being called out by the stripper from hell.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of shames him for being faithful to his wife.
Yes.
Yeah, or his soon-to-be wife. Yeah, and I was like, really? That's what the audience is going to boo and shame him for,
right.
for being faithful? Okay, well, it's Freddy's nightmares, I guess. You can't really, hold it up too high, but...
Yeah, it seems like he's like an obnoxious character, but he's not, at this point, he's not really a terrible guy. He's just sort of nervous about commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she's pretty brutal to him.
Yeah. We never find out why he is nervous about commitment, though. Maybe it's just the fact that he's 22.
That would be reason enough. And then she slams him into an Iron Maiden, the thing with the spikes in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he wakes up on the couch I'm not sure if it's Jessica's place or their shared place. Probably their shared place. But apparently he's super hungover. His friends dumped him on the porch and rang the doorbell. But she surprises him wearing lingerie.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking, like, if your partner is going to, wake up horribly hungover, that's not really the time to surprise them by being sexy.
Exactly. I mean, maybe if she brought him like a Bloody Mary and Tylenol, he would have
right.
he would have been more excited to see her.
Yeah, and then he decides that he wants to give marriage his best shot. So now it's the wedding day. Woohoo.
And that was just a horrible speech by him, because when Jessica wakes him up and she gives him another opportunity to basically get out of the marriage, and he's like, no, I'm really going to try to be the best husband, and sure, I'm going to make mistakes, but we're there for each other. And I just thought, like, I hope those aren't your vows, because you should probably stick to the traditional ones if they are.
Right.
And that's when we find out that the father-in-law owns the company and is going to make him vice president of marketing with a $20,000 raise.
But only because he wants him to be able to support the daughter.
Yeah, not because he deserves it.
Right. And the father-in-law actually does not like him at all.
I don't get the impression that the father-in-law really likes anybody. He just seems like a big grump.
Yeah, he does.
And then he mentioned that he had to cancel his golf trip so he could attend his daughter's wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Dad.
He says, like, why couldn't you have just eloped? And did you notice their last name was Jordan?
I did. Was that for any reason?
Because it's like Dan Jordan from Nightmare 4 and 5.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
But didn't seem to be any connection
with that at all. I'm sure it was just a coincidence then.
Or they could be cousins or or something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because we really don't know anything about Dan aside from his parents after in Nightmare 5 when he gets into the car accident.
Maybe they're all connected. Oh, speaking of Nightmare 5 connections, when I was looking up people on IMDb, the minister at the wedding had a bit part in Nightmare 5 as trendy guest, which I assume is probably the dinner party at Greta's house.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. I'll have to go back and watch Nightmare 5, and good catch.
So, yeah. So we've got another movie cast member on the TV show.
Right after the wedding, they go on their honeymoon to Hawaii, I think, and it's not a very long honeymoon at all. And as soon as they get back, we find out that her dad is even controlling in her marriage. He wants them to come over that evening for dinner because there's something that he wants to tell them. So, and she's like, Jessica is really worried about whatever it is that the dad has to tell her.
Yeah, and he says, even has to tell her, stop being so obsessed with your parents. Oh, but just briefly before that, there's a whole dream sequence in the wedding, though, where Gavin is going to cheat on her there's like a woman in red, and Gavin's going to go cheat on Jessica with her.
Mm-hmm. I assumed that was the stripper from hell.
Was it the same person?
I think it was.
I wasn't sure.
I think it was the stripper from hell crashing his wedding, and then, like, I don't know if it was a dream or a hallucination. It was very fuzzy on what was reality and what wasn't. So, yeah, I thought that it was the stripper from hell. He was either dreaming of or hallucinating, and she was just there to, like, wreak havoc.
But then it seems like in the dream he, like, makes the right choice, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna sleep with you, and she goes crazy and tries to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's when it cuts back, and then he's able to get married.
Yeah, he kisses the bride, and then they go off to their honeymoon.
So now we go into Jessica's parental issues.
And, oh, the issues they are.
So after that conversation with her dad, where, you know, she's all distraught about what does he want to tell us at dinner, she goes to an upscale bar, which also has a non-Springwood name. It's the Carving Knife.
Well, look at this episode being all original.
Yeah. And she picks up a guy with a mustache,
mm-hmm.
who is apparently 40 years old, because he takes off his shirt and says, look at this, not bad for 40.
Well, the hotel that they go to, is this the hotel that they're at, called Springwood Park Hotel?
It was, yes.
Yeah.
Finally a Springwood place.
Yeah, so he gets undressed, kind of encourages her to appreciate his 40-year-old body, and
mm-hmm.
she pulls out rope to tie him up with, and he's like all into it, like, oh, you're so kinky, let's do this. And she ties him up, and just when he thinks that he's about to get the ride of his life, she kind of turns a 180 on him and really gives him a surprise.
I guess she knew he was married because of his wedding ring,
mm-hmm.
and she takes pictures of him and calls his wife and tells the wife what happened and where he is.
She goes through his wallet in order to find his phone number. And
mm-hmm.
maybe it's because I was an adult in 1989, but I don't know too many men who carry their home phone number in their wallet.
That's true.
So I was kind of like, even if it was like his business card, possibly it would have his home phone number on it, but I think it would more likely have his work number on it.
True. Although, I mean, I guess she didn't do this, but you could call information and if you have the person's name and address and get the phone number, right?
Yeah, that's true. You could do that.
But yeah, there's no reason he would have had his home phone number in his wallet.
No, none at all. Well, that's where I draw the line, Freddy's Nightmares. You have completely lost me as a viewer. I don't believe any of it.
This is the flying monkeys.
The bullshit monkeys don't fly. Yep, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, he's yelling at her that he's going to get her for this. And apparently this is like her MO. This is a thing she does to married men and keeps a photo album of them.
Yeah, I wrote down that she's on a crusade to expose cheating husbands because she caught her dad having an affair. And I didn't read the synopsis of this episode before I watched it, so I thought that I was like such a detective figuring this out when it's just right there in the synopsis.
Right. Actually, I like to watch the episodes without reading the synopsis first because I like to be sort of surprised about where the story goes.
Sometimes I have to read the synopsis because the episode is so bad that I need to know what the plot is so I can make sure like we're on track with things. And I can, like, gauge how much longer the episode is going to be.
Right. Sequence after that is us discovering Jessica's past with catching her father cheating. So it flashes back to 1973. She looks like the little girl from Small Wonder.
Yes, she does. The robot girl.
Yes, exactly. And the dad, like, is not... I feel, I have no experience with this, but I feel like if you were going to cheat on your spouse and you would be a little more subtle about it if you had a, child in the house.
He was cheating on his wife in the house, I assume in their bedroom as well, with his sleeping 5-year-old daughter in the next room over. So I wonder if he, like, had to babysit her that day, or if he just came home on lunch with his girlfriend. Like, where was the mom during all of this? Was she grocery shopping?
Mm-hmm.
Was she at work? Where was she?
It was a little strange.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a little too, like, it was sort of unintentionally funny when the little girl walks in the room and she's like, what are you doing with that lady? And where's mommy? And then he starts chasing her through the house with a ping pong paddle.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that too. And so when he's chasing her through the house, like the upstairs is a normal upstairs for the house. He chases her down the steps and she runs into the basement. And then the basement turns into like this sewer boiler room combination.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes, chases her through nightmare sewer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because this is really, other than, Freddy's brief appearances, this chase through the sewer is the only part that feels Freddy-ish. This was before Freddy's Dead, but it is a little reminiscent of Maggie's flashbacks in Freddy's Dead.
Oh, you're absolutely right about that. I didn't pick up on that at all. I got a lot of Nightmare 6 vibe from episode 11, the next one that we'll talk about. But I didn't pick up on that at all, but you are so right about that.
Because it's the whole, like, I won't tell thing.
Yeah, wow. You are spot on with that.
Oh, thanks.
Now it's so clear now that you mention it. But yeah, the whole I won't tell, because Maggie sees Freddy Krueger before he was burned alive. He sees her strangling her mom in the backyard when he, I don't know, allegedly lived at 1428 Elm Street, which that's up for debate on whether or not he really would have lived in that house, and then, the Thompsons would have moved in directly after. But it's right. Nightmare 6, so you can't really expect much of anything from that sequel. Like, do you? Where is it? Where is it on your list of favorites?
Oh, if I'm ranking like the original 7, it would be last, but
okay.
But I still love it.
Okay, yeah, I like Nightmare 6 too for what it is, as like a funny one. But yeah, Nightmare 6 is my second to last one, not including Freddy vs. Jason. I don't even have that on the list. But yeah, Nightmare 6 is my second to last.
Is 2 the last?
It is. I'm sorry. 2 is like one of your top ones, right?
No, I think it's in the bottom half.
Okay.
But I mean, I love all of them. So even the ones that I rank at the end, I still really love.
Okay. My order is Nightmare 3, 7, 1, 4, 5, 6, 2.
Okay. I think I'm 1, 7, 3, 4, 5, 2, 6.
Basically, our middle chunk is almost identical.
Yes. And we both put the 3 Heather Langenkamps at the top.
That's true, because I mean, I really like Dream Master and Dream Child. I like the whole Alice saga part of the Elm Street series, but really I think that Nightmare on Elm Street as a whole could just be 1, 3, 7, and that's it, in my opinion. Yeah,
I mean, they make a really fantastic trilogy. So anyway, she caught the dead cheating. He chases her through a nightmare sequence. And so he confronts her and he says that she needs to keep the secret because if she doesn't, they'll divorce. And then the child version of her has these awful visions of what divorce looks like.
And I thought that was a really good thing to put in there, to see it through like what her child brain translated all of that to. When he said that the dad and the mom would be fighting all the time, and she gets this vision of them sitting at the dining room table in like Wild West gunfight, and they're like shooting at each other. And he said, and they'll never speak to each other. And she gets this vision of them sitting at the dining room table again, and they have a tape or a cloth over their mouth so they can't speak.
And then they say that he says we'll have to share you, or we'll have to split you.
We'll have to like share that. You. Yeah.
And then she has a vision of there's an electric meat carver.
Yeah.
Is that what you would call it?
Yeah, it's like a turkey carver.
Vision that they're going to literally cut her in half.
So they can share her. Yeah. Yeah, I really liked that part. I thought that was a good visual for how her little 5-year-old mind was translating what he was saying. And why she was so scared, because a 5-year-old girl thinking that her parents are going to get into a gunfight at the dining room table and then they're going to saw her in half. That's traumatic.
Apparently stuck with her, and it's still a big issue for her as an adult.
To where she has become like this vigilante in order to expose the cheating husbands of Springwood.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like because she couldn't. I'm trying to think of the psychology behind, well, like how one thing would lead to the other. I guess because she knew what her dad did was wrong, but she couldn't tell anyone. She wants to make up for it by outing other men.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and so they go to, didn't really come as this much of a surprise, but when they go to the house for dinner, the announcement is that the parents are getting a divorce.
And Jessica just flips out over it.
Yeah, she says, I won't let you, take it back or I'll tell. And then it turns out the mom had known about other women.
Which, that also has to add to her trauma. Like, this whole time, she kept quiet about her dad's affair so they wouldn't get divorced. And it turns out they divorced anyway. Although it was, 15 or probably about 17 years later that they divorced. But still, those 17 years, her parents were in a very unhappy marriage, and she had to have seen that and was probably a victim of that, because I don't think she's going to have a very happy marriage with her husband. Well, we find out what happens to her anyway as to why she won't have a happy marriage. But even if that didn't happen, I think that she still would have been, they would have been headed for doom.
Yeah, I can see her as someone who's like, would have a lot of suspect him of cheating all the time, even if he wasn't. And that would lead to a lot of distrust and fights. Poor Jessica.
Jessica just flips out on her parents, and Gavin takes her out of the house, and they're just going to go home and have her calm down. But when they get into the car, Jessica's driving. Why you would let a hysterical person drive a car, I don't know. Gavin seems pretty confident in that decision, so Jessica starts the car, but there's someone in the back seat.
It's the 40-year-old mustache guy.
Did we ever find out his name?
I think he was credited as creepy lawyer.
Oh, the killer lawyer.
Killer lawyer.
Killer lawyer was his credit. Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. So killer lawyer is in the back seat. He knocks out Gavin with hitting him over the head with a shoe or something. And then he tells Jessica to drive. He has Jessica drive to the Springwood Park Hotel, I assume, because she's tied up in the bed in the same fashion that he was when Jessica had called his wife. And he starts talking about, hey, you want to mess with me? I'm going to mess with you right back.
He talks about her parents' marriage, which is a little weird.
Yeah, well, she tries to justify why she did what she did by saying it really had nothing to do with him. She was just trying to get back at her parents because her dad cheated on her mom all the time. And he was kind of like, yeah, I get where you're coming from, but also you fucked with my life, so we're just not going to let that one go.
And then he's got the electric turkey carver as well.
Yeah, so, and he goes in to basically saw her in half, just like she was afraid what happened if her parents divorced. But it turns out that maybe that was a dream or a hallucination, because the next scene we see her in a psychiatric ward, and she's tied to a bed, and every time she sees Gavin's face, she freaks out. Maybe she thinks that it's the 40-year-old mustache guy.
So I guess what happened is she just snapped at her parents' house and never really recovered.
Yeah. So I assume Gavin is probably filing for divorce because his wife is like a basket case, and she can't even look at him without having an emotional reaction.
What happens to his VP job if they get divorced?
Maybe the dad works something out, like, stay married to my daughter so she'll be covered on your VP insurance and we can pay for the psychiatric ward. That is a good point. Did he stay at his father-in-law's company, and does he still get that $20,000 raise? Well, Gavin is screwed.
But he's 22, so,
yeah,
he can go anywhere career-wise from here. He's early in his career.
That's true. And I think your 20s are to make mistakes and learn life lessons. And if that's the case, then I think Gavin is on the right track because he learned a lot of lessons in this episode.
Right. So in the end, things will basically work out for Gavin, not so much for Jessica.
How did you like this episode?
I mean, as I said before, it didn't really feel like a Freddy thing.
Mm-hmm.
It just, I don't even know how to describe it. Just totally unrelated to Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, I love Diane Franklin. I think she's great. And I thought the second half was cool with the parents and her, as this vengeful, catch married men person. So second half was better. What did you think?
I didn't really care for it right from the beginning. I did not like the first half at all, but the second half, it was more enjoyable for the same reasons that you mentioned. This was their last episode for 1988, and they went on, I think, a 2 or 3 week hiatus for the holidays. So it's something that with that 3 week hiatus, I wouldn't have missed it at all. Like, oh no, what am I going to do this Friday night or whatever night it was on? I probably would have had to constantly remind myself that the next episode was coming in 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, like 3 weeks later, you would have been like, oh yeah, that show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I haven't thought about that for a few weeks.
So yeah, it was not one of the strongest ones in the series, which is unfortunate because the only horror connection is having Diane Franklin in it, and she's so well known for Amityville that I wish it was a better episode just for her credibility. I liked her in it. Overall, I wasn't a fan of the episode.
Yeah, I agree.
And this seems like a good time to bring Diane in.
Oh, thank you. And I'm so happy to be on your show, too. I mean, this is exciting because usually, no one really usually picks an episode and then goes into it. And this was a very wild role in the Bride Wore Red. And so I was so excited that you were doing it, and I was excited to be on this. So this is very, very cool for me, too.
Were you familiar with the Nightmare on Elm Street series when you were cast in this role?
I was slightly familiar, but I didn't go see all the films, and there were I think a few by the time that role came on. I think it was 1988 when it came out. But I did know Heather Langenkamp, which is really funny. I knew her personally, and as well as Amanda Wyss. By then I had done Better Off Dead with her. And we were friends. We would just hang out. So it was very funny. Then when I got this, I actually thought, well, maybe Heather would be on it. And unfortunately she wasn't, which was a shame. But, obviously Freddy Krueger was. And I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be great to work with Freddy, Krueger? but then he wasn't in it either because he was in the interstitial parts where in between. So that was kind of like, okay, what is this? But I really liked the genre of horror because I really believe that there's so much drama in horror, and I love drama, so I love to perform. So it was that role that I played was I get married, and that was very fun. I was like, oh, I wasn't married at the time. It was like, oh, get to wear the wedding dress and have that scene and then have it go bad. And I remember there was a scene where I had to smoke a cigarette. And I become like Gavin's. He's like he goes to a bachelor party. I don't know if the audience knows, and he goes into the back, and there's this woman, and you think he's going to be introduced to like this, kind of a prostitute, kind of a woman, and it turns out to be me. But I'm all dressed like all sexy, and I've got a cigarette, and I have to say it was very funny because I don't smoke. And when I was given a cigarette, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to smoke, I'm going to try to smoke. But if you see the episode, you'll see I do not hold the cigarette like someone who smoked, which was very funny. So, that's my little inside thing to people who do it. Although by the time I got older, I figured that out. But it was very funny in that episode. I had to play somebody savvy, and I was like, I don't know what to do with the cigarette. But the role was, I thought, really interesting because so I go play that character, and then I'm very worried in the story. But it takes a crazy turn, and the dream sequence, I know we're going to talk for a while, so we can get into that. But I just thought that the role, and I've said this before, if there's a good role, I'm very interested. And so, no matter, in a sense, I'm attracted to good roles. And it doesn't just say the project has to be good too, but if it's a good part and it's something challenging, that's what I like.
Well, I thought this role, you did an exceptional job in it. Your character goes through quite a development with everything when we see the family dynamic that she has, especially with her father and the secret that she has to keep. So I think that you did a phenomenal job throughout the entire episode of just carrying that through and really bringing the audience along through her journey.
Yeah, I think that what's amazing, and I'm sure this happens, every family has some kind of secret, right? And the thing that's interesting is how we react to that. Sometimes people, the child finds out a secret in the family and doesn't want to say anything. Or maybe they do say something, maybe they bring it up, but then it becomes another problem. And in this case, the story was the girl finds out, I think, that her father, maybe I could be wrong, but was it the father cheated on the mother or?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I
Yep.
just was trying to, it's been a while. So I was like, but I was like, and, feeling responsible for that, carrying that secret, is heavy, because I think the child thinks, wants to protect the mother. I think in real life, that's a real, I'm sure this is a real problem, and it's a burden, and then she's getting married. So it's bringing up a lot of emotion for her in like the next, stage of her life. And so there's conflicting emotions. There's anger, there's, at her father, but also, he's a patriarch. So has to like be respectful to him. And the mother is, compliant and she's sort of like dutiful. And so that child becomes caught in this web of where's my alliance? Like do I back my dad? But then I'm mad at my dad, I think I will have to say as a character, you will always love your parent, but you may not like them. Mm-hmm. And I think that if that's the case, this is what my character went through. She was conflicted, and then she's like, how can I think she also didn't know how it would affect her. She knew how she was emotional about it, but then you get into the depth of the character, and then like when she turns into the little girl, my gosh, and that was so funny to play because I remember thinking, what are they going to do? And then it's like they put these like pigtails on me and stuff, and it looks so creepy. And I'm thinking, this is like so like it is like Twilight Zone-esque, Mm-hmm. And then just be that little girl, and then it's cool. It's like it's just fun to watch. I think as a character going to that little girl thing, and then at the end, she seduces this stranger. Probably mm-hmm. more likely to kind of go full circle with her dad. Like, okay, I'm going to see what he experiences and I'm going to go full circle with that character. And then at the end, wow, that's just, she meets the worst man in the world.
Yeah, she does.
Yes.
She does.
That's, yeah. I mean, I don't know if has any of the audience members seen the episode, you think, or I'm just wondering.
Most of our listeners have, bootleg copies of the series. So
I don't want to do a spoiler, but yeah, the end is where this guy comes and he wants to he's gonna kill me, So mm-hmm. whether I don't want to spoil it, but so I think, and then I wake up, it's like about to die. So the whole idea is that there's so many times when you might look at a person and you might think, what's wrong with them? Why are they acting so weird? Or like they've just lost it, but they might be going through so much torture in their minds. You don't know people's lives, So I think in this term case, she's like, they think she's crazy, but I think she, is somebody who just went through all this stuff and she didn't know how to deal with it. She didn't have anyone to talk to,
Yeah.
Dave and I had previously discussed when we were talking about this episode that it seemed like your character was giving Gavin many outs from the marriage. Was had checked in several times with him to say, if you don't want to go through with this, that's okay with me. We noticed that both of your characters are at age 22 in this episode. So I don't know if that had something to do with it, because 22 is such a young age.
Yeah, I think you're really on it, because I think there's doubt in both of the characters, and I think that is also very natural at a young age to be doubtful, because you love the person, you don't want to let them go, you don't want to give them up, but at this, so you're holding on to like, if I don't commit to this person now, even though I'm really maybe not ready, or maybe I think I'm not, maybe I don't think I'm, maybe some people I'm not ready for marriage, or I'm not going to be a good mate. I don't want to do this to that person, but at the same time, you don't want to lose that person. So you don't know what to do. You don't know whether you should continue dating people. My personal feeling is that, in life, it's the timing is everything. And if it's not the right time to get married, don't get married. Don't push it. You have to, if it's meant to be, it'll come back. But if it's not, you have to move on. Because, and here's a good example. This is what happens if you get married too early, right?
Right.
Freddy takes over your life if you get married too soon.
Don't do it. This is what happens. I do think that it is a funny kind of strange moral to the story too. Like, and if you do push it when it's not supposed to happen, you'll be miserable. But I gotta tell you, the 20s are such a hard time. I really think it's just a hard time of life, because that's when you're defining yourself, you're figuring out who I am, what I want. And then if you get in a relationship and you don't know who you are yet, that makes it even more difficult,
Yes.
And you know what I mean? It's just hard. I can't even tell you how many times I remember in my 20s thinking, like, when am I going to get married? And if I do, when will that be? And oh no, I'm 25 and I'm not in a relationship yet. Like, or like, I'm not in the
Definitely.
person. It's such a weird thing. And I don't know why it is, but like, why am I not in a relationship yet with somebody that should I be? Like, you don't know like what your story is. And it's like, everyone has a script and we don't know what our story is until we live it. And you have to figure out what's important to me. Right? Am I?
Oh, no, totally right.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Luckily, today, it is a lot easier because people can marry later. You can remarry if you want. You can have children later. It's a little more open than it used to be. It used to be just like, wow. Talk about the 80s. Like, people got married. It just, you had to figure it out. People in their 20s were going to college or getting married, or I don't know, or they were like, okay, I'm never getting married, and that's it. But now there's kind of an easier, I don't know why, but it's just more accepted if you get married in your 30s, or if you have your kids, in your 40s. Like, you can do that. That is possible. But I definitely think that the 20s is really hard. It, like, now in my perspective, in my 50s, I can look back and I can say, wow, why did I make myself so crazy in my 20s? I should have just had fun, travel, meet people, and not felt a guilt or a heaviness that I should be doing, or this demand in myself, do you feel the same way? That that's what the 20s were sort of, or are?
Yeah, I was. When I was in my 20s, it was in 2000. 2000 had just started, so it was a little bit different time period in the late 80s of when your character was just in her 20s. So there wasn't that expectation for me to be married so young. It was more open for me to start a career and be focused on that.
Right.
So,
good.
Yeah, which is really nice. I think it would be interesting to see if your episode, The Bride Wore Red, came out now, how different your character might be played or written, because there wouldn't be that pressure for her to marry at age 22 and then go through the psychology of remembering what her dad did to her and made her go through. Yeah,
it would. And how about you, Dave? What's your thought in the 20s?
I'm about the same age as Michelle, and my 20s were very exploratory, and I wasn't, looking to settle down, and was really about, my career and figuring out who I was as a person and continuing my education. Yeah.
Exploring, travel, date a lot. And I think also the other thing is in this episode, Gavin didn't date enough. He didn't date enough girls. And that's what that whole thing of the bachelor party is. And like, what if maybe it's another person you should be marrying? Or it wasn't even that he didn't love my character. I think he just wanted to make sure that it was more of a feeling of claustrophobic. I'm not going to be able to date anyone else in the future. That's what I felt.
Dave and I noticed that in the episode, Gavin goes to his bachelor party wearing his tuxedo that he's supposed to wear for his wedding the next day.
Yes. I know, wasn't that funny? Yes, absolutely. That was really funny. And there was, and I also, by the way, I love the part in that episode with the masks when all the girls put on the masks. That was that was really cool. I would say that if that happened today, if that episode was made today, it would probably be, she'd be torn between her career or college or career or whatever, and being married. I think there would definitely be that as being established in the story, because I think today women are, going to get their education, they want to work, and they're kind of torn with that part of it. But here was just really I think, commitment. The story was about commitment. So, I think people have problems with commitment today. It's trust. And this story wasn't so much about trusting each other. Like, he was not like always wondering if she was seeing somebody else, or she wasn't wondering if he was really seeing someone else. Their problem was committing themselves. Like, do I want to commit? And that I thought was kind of an interesting story, like an idea. What do you guys think about that? About commitment,
Yeah, Gavin's a little bit obnoxious, but his fears are, he's very grounded. He's very introspective. Like, can I really do this? Is this the right thing? And, that they go through all these scenarios in their head. There's a dream sequence where they're, living together unhappily after getting married. And it feels very real and exploratory of what people go through.
Yeah.
And I think with your character's experience, commitment, it was really only seeing her parents. And because she knew that her dad was habitually cheating on her mom, that her idea of commitment was kind of skewed a little bit. And she wanted to give Gavin every opportunity to make sure that he was really in this.
Right.
Yeah. And your character, she really had to commit to her vigilante crusade to expose every cheating husband in Springwood. So that was like her thing that she got up for.
That was really fun. As far as like a character goes, like who is she loyal to, the mother or the father, in the sense that, by being loyal to the mother, she wants to, tell what the truth is. But there's that connection, the father-daughter connection is very strong. And, it's almost like, you don't want to do what the dad did. And so she's afraid of commitment herself. She might be saying, Gavin, you sure you want to do this? But maybe she's not sure if she'll be able to be faithful. That's a part of it too. And then, it's a double thing. Like, sometimes people are afraid of what they themselves are capable of. So, but the other part of it was, like you said, she goes and then she does the revenge on the guys. And that, to me, that's a movie in itself. I think somebody could do that as a movie.
Oh, sure.
Like, to all the guys who ever, cheated on their wives. Well, guess what? I'm going to get back at you. So I thought that was kind of a juicy part. And I loved the way the costumes, the outfits they put me in. That was very fun as well.
Oh, yeah. It was like a film noir. It was great.
Was it?
Yeah.
Do you think that your character would have been able to continue exposing cheating husbands if she and Gavin got married and she didn't end up in the psych ward?
I don't know. I don't think she would have done it if she married Gavin. I think if she would have married Gavin, she might have been just very mistrusting of him. But I think that she just, if she had not gotten married to him, I think she would have found a way not to marry him and just become a vigilante of that. I could see that. And I think that the fact that she went to an insane asylum, I just thought that was a very cool reveal at the end. But I think, I don't know, I just think it would have been better to see her just keep on going. It would be kind of more interesting, sort of like a Glenn Close kind of a project. But yeah, I think that character would have stayed with Gavin if they had gotten married. I don't think she would have done anything, but she would have been very mistrustful of him every time he went out.
Definitely. Did you have a favorite scene to film when you were doing this?
Oh, that's a good question. What was it? I can tell you what the most not favorite scene was. The least favorite was laying and on that gurney thing with the chainsaw coming at me. That was the least favorite.
Oh yeah, that had to have been scary.
That was not a good feeling. Not a good feeling. And I would say, like, anybody working with a chainsaw, not good feeling. But although the guy who played the actor, he was very nice and fine. But that was the least comfortable scene. And let me think. My favorite scene, I'd have to say, well, there was a lot of aspects. I think I liked getting married. In the wedding dress and all that at the beginning. I like that scene because we weren't getting married, but we were. It was macabre. It was odd, I like the redness, and I don't know if I've ever seen anyone pick that subject matter. Do you know? I mean, certainly at the time, I hadn't seen anyone do an episode or do some kind of a thing in film which talked about the evilness of the evil. I don't know if that's a word. Evilness marriage. I mean, I don't remember anyone ever picking up that subject matter. So I think I liked that idea of like, well, how can marriage be evil? How can there be something bad about it? And that was what it was about. It was an interesting episode. And I have to say, I was kind of surprised they cast me. I always felt like I looked too young. But then I was like, okay, well, this is great. If you think, and maybe that was the idea, if you marry too young, then you can get in trouble. I wonder.
For the costuming, did you have any input for the character, or was it just presented to you? And did you have to do like multiple fittings for the dress?
No, they just did a regular costume fitting. But I will say that I thought I had a nice variety of clothes in it. I had such a big storyline that, it went from the wedding dress and then like the lingerie and then the little girl costume and the sophisticated outfit, and then the dutiful daughter outfit. And there were a lot of costume changes. I remember we just shot it. Probably it took a week to shoot, but it was a lot of work, and there was a scene where we're at the dinner table and I'm crying, and we did this scene, and I was getting very upset, and there was an actress there who was with me, and she said, you know what? She goes, you should just hold back your tears. Like, don't give it all. Like, just hold back a little bit. And she was very helpful. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because that scene was like, I was so upset, like upon finding out about my dad and all this stuff. And I think it was a little nice direction from her. And I forgot her name, but I always thought, when you're acting, when you're doing a part, sometimes, you see it one way and you don't see it how the camera sees it or how the audience sees it. So it was a nice little piece of direction. She's like, just hold back a little bit and don't reveal, don't let it out all at once, or don't let too much. And I thought that was a really nice note. So when that scene comes up, you can take a look at that. That was just a really nice note on the part of her. It wasn't even the director of the episode. It was a part of another actress. And I was like, you go, girl. I like that. That's great.
Yeah, I have to agree. That entire scene reveal of your character finding out that all this time she had to keep quiet when the mother knew that the father was having an affair, all of that played out really nicely. And there was that build up to where the audience could feel your character having that slow breakdown and realizing that basically she's been doing all of this for nothing.
Yeah. She's been suffering for nothing. And I would love to know from the audience point of view if anyone's ever either gone through this or ever had to hold a secret in that you then revealed and then found out that you didn't need to. Like all the pain and the strain of doing that and saying, really, what? Are you kidding me? I mean, it's like, you know, you find out your brother is taking drugs and you don't want to tell your parents, and you finally do, oh, you know, I'm going to tell you, you know, he's taking drugs. Oh, we knew that, you know, and you're like, what? What? And you know, I mean, it's certainly when you're young and you're going through things the first time. I mean, regardless, I think, you know, you are, you know, it just blows your mind, and you know, you think, well, what is it all for? Like, how could this, you know, how can this be true? But and I think what's interesting with fidelity, like in that case, we never find out too much about the parents. You know, we just accept the dad is, I mean, the worst I could say is the dad's patriarchal and the mom is, they have this deal, you know, they have this marriage deal that, you know, I cheat on you and you just I'll take care of you in the house, and, you know, and we'll pay for things. And I think there's a lot of people who do that, you know, but it's just an understood agreement. And then the child grows up, doesn't understand because, you know, obviously they came in later and they didn't see, you know, that it's difficult to have a family and, you know, how to, you know, you pay for things, and then the parents don't want to break up because of the kid. So I think I just think it's a subject matter that is still today, and that people can still relate to this story. And I'd just like to find out from the audience, like, what their perspective is. I mean, it is over the top. Like the whole episode is heightened in look and color, and, you know, it's not realistic, but I do think that the story translates to today.
Yeah, I was curious, just from what you added to the character, or when you decided that your character was just going to snap from, like, what was her breaking point when she finally learned about the mother and father's relationship, and how the mother knew and the father's very distrusting anyway, of what part was your motivation in order to just let the character say, okay, I've had it all and this is my breaking point?
I think that it had to do with trust. You know, you trust your parents. You put your trust in your parents first, foremost. That's or whoever is raising you. That's your primary trust that you learn trust from. And when that person, the people that you raised, that raised you, now shows that they were not true, your whole world is shattered. And so I think from the minute that happened, I personally was very easily, I could totally commit to, you know, now everything's different. Now everything's changed. And my parents were very, my parents stayed together, and they were very committed, and they were very loving. But if I had found out something so direct with that, I would have flipped out. Like I would have lost my mind, because again, it is the center of what you're raised with. If someone always lies to you, well, then, you know, that's another story, you know, like if they never promised you anything, then you'd be like, okay, well, you know, I need hope. But in this case, I think that, you know, they in this story, they tried to make it the perfect home. They tried to make, you know, the parents were very kind of, for better use of the word, like anal, kind of like everything had to be perfect. And, but they were just type A. I don't know. So my feeling about that is that that breaking point had to do with lack of trust, that trust being broken, and rage, anger, sadness, and it's almost like it was almost as if and again, this is another thing, the father and daughter relationship, very close. It's almost like the father cheated on her, you know, the daughter took it that personally, that it's like, you know, yeah, right. So like, you cheated on me because he cheated with his trust, you know, and the father's trying to be like, no, it's fine. And your mother's fine with it and it's all good. But she's like, no. And I think because the mother didn't stand up for herself, the daughter does. Right. So the daughter, and always the next generation will stand up for what the old generation didn't. Right. And you see that in life, you know, where something bad happens to the parents, the kid goes, you know what? It gives what is the reason to live, like the raison d'etre. I don't know. I'm just saying things now, but it's like you have a reason, your purpose in life. And that sometimes comes from what your parents didn't do or they did wrong. And you go, you know what? I am not going to let that happen. And the key of that is that it comes out of emotion as opposed to thinking. And so in this character was very emotional, and she didn't stop and think and say, you know what, that's their life. This is my life and I have nothing to do with it. But she was reactive to the situation. And that's why I think she lost her mind, because it was all about, it was an emotional reaction to the situation.
So you had experience or horror experience from being on Amityville 2 prior to this episode. So were you able to take any of that, what you learned from that set, and bring it on to Freddy's Nightmares?
Yes, Amityville taught me, well, first of all, the tone and how serious things are. You keep a solemn tone. I screamed a lot in Amityville, and boy, that taught me how to scream.
Oh, nice.
And I think what I have to say about Amityville 2 and this one is they're both about relationships, and the relationships like I had with my brother, and now his relationship with my husband, my father. I think that when we talk about when there's horror, sometimes there's like horror that you see physically, like, again, like blood squirting out of your head and eyeballs popping out. But then there's also the horror of reality, that there's a psychological problem and the realization you're in a family and all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, we have a problem. There's a problem in this family. It is real. And that is horror. And that is to me the real horror, because you can't get out of it. It's until you're out of the house, you're in the problem. And when you're young and as for Amityville, I was a part of this system where I couldn't get out. I'm a child, and if there's incest in the family, I mean, again, you love your family, but you can't. In your brain, you can't separate. Like, you wind up like protecting this, or do you call it out? I mean, I think you don't want to hurt your family, but at the same time you're involved. And that's where the secrets come, where, you are somebody in a situation where you keep the secret because you haven't made up in your mind what you're going to do. And you know that if you tell someone there's a problem within the family, then people are going to get reactive and everything, it's all going to, things are going to happen. But if you don't say anything, I think in the back of your mind, like even with Patricia Montelli in Amityville, I think in the back of I played my character as if everything was just going to be okay when I wake up in the morning. Like, we're all going to be a happy family, right? It's all going to go back to normal. This didn't happen. This incest did not happen. And then, you try to make it work, but in your head, like you're trying to, I mean, that's how I see the character. And when I was playing these characters, I know that it's helping a lot of people, because we go through life and it is not easy. And sometimes we see ourselves in characters that are in the films and movies, and it helps us because it makes us feel like we're not alone,
Definitely.
So I just want to say before we go, I mean, unless my phone goes, I just want to say, if anyone wants to follow me, but not like a stalker, okay? No stalking, okay? But you can go on Twitter, Diane Franklin 80, or you can also go to Facebook, Diane Franklin Fans, and you'll see black and white photos of me from my books, which I have some books on Amazon about my career and how my autobiographies and my life. And then you can also follow me on Instagram at actress Diane Franklin. And the reason why you may is because although I did that Amityville, I was very, I worked a lot when I was in my teens or my early 20s in the 80s. And I did a film called Amityville 2. Well, now in that film I would play the daughter, but now I have the amazing experience of it playing again. I play the mother now, and it's called Amityville Murders, the new film I did. So that's going to be very exciting. And I have to say, I think I did the best acting in my entire life in this film.
You were fantastic in it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm seeing you saw it. So you can back it. It was quite an amazing role. So if for whatever else, if and it's not gory, but it is scary. But for whatever else, my performance in it is definitely something worth seeing. I have to say, I would never waste anyone's money, but for that, I would have to say it is amazing. And it's going to come out in theaters and all over stream in February. So get ready for that.
Oh,
it's coming out.
Okay. Do you have any conventions coming up?
Yes, I do. Thank you for asking. In February, February 3rd, I have a convention in Hollywood, actually in Burbank, in Los Angeles. It is the Hollywood Show, and it will be, I will be there with the other princess from Bill and Ted's. There's another princess, Annette, and she was the other girl who played me in Bogus Adventures. So she's never been at a convention before. So we'll both be there, which is very fun. And that's February 3rd. And then I'm also going to be in May. I'm going to be in Ohio at a convention called Retro Weekend.
Oh, I live in Ohio.
Yeah. Oh, great. Then come. I think it's in Dayton, Ohio. Yeah. So come see me. Oh, that'll be so much fun. Definitely. So it's the end of May, the last weekend of May.
Awesome.
So,
yes, I will be there.
Yay, Michelle, yay! I'll see you there. Great.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for talking to us about your episode. It was an absolute pleasure to get to hear your thoughts on it.
Thank you. And I hope and send me the link, because I'd love to share it with my fans and my friends, and it's just great to be remembered.
Absolutely. I will be sure to tag you in everything. So.
All right. Okay, great. All right. Well, have a lovely evening. All right.
Thank you. You too. Thanks so much.
Bye.
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 Okay. Well, do you have anything for next week's episode?
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please join us next week when we talk about Season 1, Episode 11, Do Dreams Bleed, where Freddy takes on the Springwood Chopper.